Hello, everybody. My name is Jax James, and I'm here to chat with you guys about the currently filed legislation that has hearings, both new legislation and some goodies that are out there. I know you guys are watching from pretty much all over the country, so you may not specifically see your state today, but that doesn't mean that there's not something going on in your state. So definitely take the opportunity to drop where you're watching from in the comments, and I will make sure to go and check and see if we have any moving legislation in that state. So what I want to go over today are going to be the few states that you see outlined in the description with either new or moving legislation that has been filed there. And then at the end, I'll go through the comments and check and see if there's anything else that we need to cover questions-wise or policy-wise. So let's go ahead and kick it off. We are going to be breaking down the bills based on topic, and we're going to start off with legalization. There are a lot of legalization bills that are moving across the country, and the ones that we want to highlight are some newly filed ones and one that has a hearing scheduled. So if you are watching from Kansas, House Bill 2367 would create an adult use market where those over the age of 21 could purchase up to 1 ounce. And that would also include cannabis concentrates. And this would be at state licensed retailers. So in Kansas, you can definitely participate in that action alert if you live there. If you have family that happen to be from that state, make sure that you share it with them. In Louisiana, we've got House Bill 17 that would allow for those 21 and up to purchase, cultivate, produce, and distribute cannabis. You would be able to purchase up to 1 ounce of cannabis or cannabis products per calendar day. So those in Louisiana, make sure you participate. Then big movements in Maryland. As you guys probably recall, the referendum passed last November instituting regulated adult use market, but there was a few statutory regulatory things that had to come back and put together. So there's House Bill 556 and its companion Senate Bill 516 that would create an avenue for on-site consumption where 21 and up can purchase and consume in a social setting. It would also institute certain parental and personal protections for both medical and adult use. Additionally, the bill would increase the amount of cannabis that a registered patient could possess. The new proposed limits are up to 4 ounces of flower, 36 grams of THC products, and up to 4 plants for home cultivation. Under state law, patients are not currently allowed to cultivate plants in their home. So that is an important change. The update here is that House Bill 566 has a hearing in the House Economic Matters Committee on the 17th of this month. And then SB 516 has a hearing scheduled for the Senate Finance Committee on the 9th of March. So those bills both have hearings coming up. You can participate in the action alert, and also you can actually submit testimony virtually through the Maryland website if you would like to do that. Coming back to the Northeast, we've got New Hampshire. Lots of bills were filed in New Hampshire, and it looks like they're kind of trying to streamline it down to one bill that they're going to promote using. And this is House Bill 639, which would allow for the home cultivation for one's personal use. It would authorize a new standalone cannabis commission to regulate the production and sales with the oversight of an independent advisory board. There would also be a sales tax for adults. It would be 8.5% meals and rooms tax, which is interesting, meals and rooms on cannabis, but potato. Additionally, there's important legislation, HB 344, which legalizes cannabis possession by adults. Under the plan, 21 and older may possess up to 3/4 of an ounce of cannabis, 5 grams of hashish, and certain cannabis-infused products. It also legalizes home cultivation. So both of these bills are currently still moving through the legislature. There is hearings coming up through an executive session. So they've held hearings on these already. They're going to have an executive session to discuss and hopefully vote shortly. Make sure that you submit your support for legislation. There is a link to both the action alert and to submit your written testimony in the blog post today. Now let's go to my home state of Texas right now, sitting here in beautiful Austin, Texas. Balmy 70 something degrees outside and sunshiny, but windy as heck. I don't know why I just gave you the weather forecast, but we have SB 209, which would regulate the cultivation, manufacture, processing, distribution, sale, testing, transportation, delivery, transfer, possession, all the things of cannabis and cannabis products. 21 and up could possess 2.5 ounces of cannabis flower or 15 grams of cannabis concentrate. It also would allow home cultivation of up to 12 plants and creates parental protections for legal cannabis consumers. Then in the House here in Texas, we have House Bill 1831 that legalizes the cultivation and possession, the use and sale of up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana with no more than 15 grams of it being in the form of concentrates. Again, adults could cultivate up to 12 plants in their private residence, and the legislation would also allow for expungement of any previous offense that would now be legal. Additionally, there would be a 10% tax implemented on the sales and distributed to further cannabis research and regulation offices. Lastly, having to do with legalization, we've got the state of Virginia. SB 1133 regulates the sale of cannabis. It has passed the Senate with bipartisan support, and now it awaits action in the House. So if you're watching from Virginia, make sure you participate in that action alert as well. So I am going to take a quick little break from going over this legislation and come back over to the comments and see where you guys are watching from. As I mentioned, I'm going to go over the states that have new or moving legislation, but that doesn't mean just because you don't see your state in the list there that there's not legislation in your state. So I will check out the comments intermittently, and as I get closer to the end, I will highlight any bills that weren't covered today. So let's see, we've got Ohio, Virginia, Indiana, Pennsylvania. Awesome, awesome. Very cool. Thanks for watching, guys. Actually, it looks like we've got a couple from each of those locations, so that's kind of cool. Also, someone just chimed in, Arkansas. Awesome. So coming back, I'm going to go over some medical access bills, some additional miscellaneous bills that we support, and then one bit of legislation that we oppose. So having to do with medical access, in Arizona, Senate Bill 1494 provides health coverage for medical marijuana patients so that qualified patients can have certain costs reimbursed. Under current state law, medical marijuana is not regulated through insurance companies and is not covered under insurance plans. Of course, this is really extremely important in making sure that we can bring cannabis medicine on par with other medications. Additionally, in Colorado, there's Senate Bill 81, and it seeks to reverse some unduly restrictive provisions that were enacted into law as a result of a passage of a bill HB 1317 back in 2021. If this bill passed, it would remove numerous undue requirements that have been recently placed upon physicians who issue medical cannabis recommendations. This bill has been scheduled for a hearing in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee on the 16th of this month. So if you are in Colorado, make sure you participate in that action alert and support this effort. Additionally, in Georgia, there's House Bill 337. This would strike the THC cap of 5% on medical cannabis products, while also opening up the program to those with other eligible medical conditions. Unfortunately, under current state law in Georgia, low THC oil is available for a limited list of conditions, but there are no active dispensaries in the state, which is just wild to me. So make sure if you live in Georgia or have friends or family who live there that you share this action alert and participate in it yourself. Now, coming back to Kansas, we talked about legalization bill that they had, but there's also two bills having to do with medical cannabis. We've got Senate Bill 135 that would allow for medical cannabis to be cultivated, distributed, sold, and used by patients that have a medical registration ID card. The bill sets a limit of 3 ounces of cannabis flower for a 30-day supply limit for registered cannabis users. Patients without a medical card will be subject to a $400 fine if they can provide evidence that their physician recommended the use of medical marijuana for one of their listed qualifying conditions. Additionally, Senate Bill 171 would also allow for the cultivation, distribution, sale, possession, and use for patients that have explicit qualified conditions, but this is with the primary goal of addressing the needs of veterans who could be helped in treating various afflictions that they live with the use of cannabis. So if you live in Kansas, you can support those efforts. Now, in Maryland, SB 587 would allow for the use of certain medical cannabis products by qualified patients on the grounds of certain healthcare facilities, which is not currently allowed. So, of course, that's an extremely important provision, and I encourage y'all to participate in that. Looking at Virginia, there's several House and Senate bills that have been introduced to provide numerous operational improvements and cost-saving measures to Virginia's medical cannabis program. These improvements would be to the benefit of tens of thousands of Virginians who are currently participating in the program. And in West Virginia, we have Senate Bill 521, which would allow edible forms of cannabis to be purchased and consumed by medical dispensaries, so long as the edible product is not shaped or designed to entice children to consume it. Under current state law, edible cannabis is prohibited for sale or use. Patients may not use an edible form of cannabis to aid in the ingestion of the plant by the patient. As you know, there's different uptake methods that give you different onsets of the therapeutic value of cannabis. And so this would allow an important access to these edible forms. So I'm going to check in on the comments real quick and see how you guys doing. We've got Idaho in the house, Virginia, Missouri. All right, awesome. I'm going to come back to the comments here in just a second. We still have a few more bills to go over, and then I will see if I missed anything for those of you commenting on what other active bills might be in your state. So in Arizona, House Bill 2776 would protect tenants. They would do this by restricting the landlord's power to terminate a rental agreement because the tenant uses marijuana. If passed, rental tenants in the state of Arizona will be protected from being evicted based solely on their marijuana use. Additionally, another Kansas bill, Kansas has been lighting it up this week. House Bill 2363 would expunge the records of anyone charged with a nonviolent cannabis offense and discharges anyone serving a sentence for a nonviolent cannabis offense. And if passed, the bill would go into effect on July 1st, 2023. Now, in Maine, we've got Legislature Document 555. This will increase the total number of plants an adult may home cultivate from 3 to 6 mature plants, from 6 to 12 immature plants, and now you could have an unlimited number of seedlings if the person is 21 and older with adequate land and also has permission, a permanent home on the premises. Interesting little caveat there. Now, in Maryland, we've got SB 671, which would offer reciprocity to out-of-state medical cannabis patients so that they could access their medicine while visiting Maryland if they have a valid card from another state. We've got New Mexico, House Bill 314. This would automatically expunge the records of anyone with an offense involving cannabis that's no longer a crime as of June 29, 2021, and or any charge that would result in a lesser offense if the Cannabis Regulation Act had been in effect at the time of the offense. So what they're talking about there is an enhancement. Perhaps you had a charge and it was enhanced by your marijuana possession. In 2021, New Mexico governor signed a bill that would automatically remove the public records of certain low-level cannabis offenders or redacted sections that were cannabis related. So this bill, HB 314, takes it a step further. Now we've got Rhode Island. Rhode Island has House Bill 5412, which legalizes cannabis delivery from compassionate centers, which are cannabis dispensaries. The bill allows marijuana products to be delivered by a compassionate center employee to a person located in the state that is registered with the center, and it caps the amount that is permitted to be delivered at $300 of cannabis products. Now, in Vermont, Senate Bill 72 seeks to strike the potency limit on cannabis products sold by licensed retailers. Vermont has a cap on THC. 60% THC in solid concentrates, and 30% THC in cannabis flowers. So definitely, if you live in Vermont, we want to see that restriction removed. Now, there is one piece of legislation that NORML does oppose that we wanted to highlight this week, and it is out of Rhode Island. Senate Bill 125 would impose new civil fines and penalties when a gathering of more than 2 people is using marijuana on the property. If passed, this bill would create a $500 penalty for first-time offenders, a $750 fee for second-time offenders, and $1,000 for third-time offenders. So, of course, 2 or more people could live in a house. Does that mean that you can't consume cannabis together? So, of course, very, very important legislation to oppose in Rhode Island. Now, let me come back to the comments. I'm going to pull up my handy dandy tracking sheet so that I can let you guys know what is going on in your state. I saw a few people commenting from Idaho. Currently in Idaho, there is no currently filed legislation having to do with cannabis. So there's actually no current action alerts in Idaho. But coming back to Virginia and Ohio. So Virginia, I went through several of the action alerts there. In Ohio, there's actually a bit of legislation having to do with per se driving limits. So as I go through these bills that aren't explicitly in the blog, I encourage you guys to go to norml.org/act. It'll have all of the federal nationwide action alerts at the top. And then underneath it, you'll see this dynamic map. And you can hover over your state and it will pop up any legislation that we have action alerts on. So if I mention something, that is definitely where you want to go, norml.org/act. In Indiana, I see you guys are watching. There's actually 3 different topics that bills have been introduced on, and it looks like quite a few bills on each of these. So Indiana is addressing legalization as well as the decriminalization of, depending on the legislation, either 1 ounce or 2 ounces of possession, and also medical cannabis. So I definitely encourage those watching from Indiana to participate in that. Now, in Pennsylvania, there is not currently moving legislation, but there have been a few memos drafted about some intent that there is to file bills. So definitely stay tuned, Pennsylvania. We'll have some more for y'all shortly, hopefully. So Texas, I see Texas on there. I went over some of the legalization bills that were newly filed over this last week. But if you actually visit texasnormal.org and you are watching right now, you can click on the 88th legislature tab, and that will give you a full rundown of every bill that's been filed having to do with cannabis. And then you'll find action alerts for both medical, decriminalization, and legalization that you can participate in there. So there are a lot of opportunities to engage in Texas, and we got some work to do, guys. This is going to be a wild session, I believe it. Now in Missouri, let me click over to my spreadsheet. Excuse me, guys. It's a little bit allergy-ish here. I mean, it's Austin. It's always allergy-ish. So Missouri, we've got actually quite a litany of bills there that you can support and participate in. We've got medical cannabis parental protections, early release for those with marijuana offenses, Medical Patient Privacy Act, cannabis banking, allowing medical cannabis on campuses, not allowing for the smell of or the odor of cannabis to be a reason to search. And then there's also one that we oppose having to do with open containers. So in Missouri, those of you watching, definitely participate in that. Now, California, California NORML does a really great job with their action alerts. And right now, I believe the main one that they're focusing on is one that has to do with pain and seniors. So you can participate in that alert. South Carolina, I see you guys commenting from there. I know there's a few bills. Let me just make sure I have them straight. So South Carolina, I got a couple bills that we're going to go over, and there's actually 2 more action alerts in the hopper that you should stay tuned for over the next few days. But we've got legislation to decriminalize possession for veterans, medical cannabis, total decriminalization bill, a let doctors decide medical bill as well. So some good legislation in South Carolina. Let's see. All right. Looks like I went over all of the states that you guys had questions about, as well as the ones with new and moving legislation. So I wanted to give you guys a quick little update. I've been doing these live streams on Tuesday, but due to the nature of the legislature, I'm finding myself needing to be at the Capitol a lot on Tuesday and having some meetings and such that are scheduled quite often on Tuesday. So I'm going to move these to Wednesday around lunchtime. I know that varies depending on which time zone you're in, but mostly we will do these on Wednesday. Since it is legislative session, if I have hearings or other things that I have to attend to, of course, I might bump it to Thursday. So y'all stay tuned, but I want to make sure that I'm keeping you updated on when you can tune in and participate. And of course, you know, if you are interested in engaging with the legislature, you can do more than just participate in these action alerts. I encourage you to look at our chapters list, which I've got the link below in the description that you can just click on and see if there's a chapter near you. If there's not, there's some information on how you could start a chapter. Also, there is information on how you can become a dues-paying member of NORML. Of course, you know, we are a consumer and patient advocacy nonprofit, and we focus on advancing legislation that helps and empowers patients and consumers. And we do that basically completely from donors like you and members like you. So I definitely encourage you to support us in that manner. And on that note, I guess I'll be seeing you guys at the new time next week on Wednesday. I thank you all for watching and tuning in and commenting and engaging with me today so that we can make sure that you know what is going on in your state and how you can advance cannabis law reform where you live. So until next time, friends, I will see you on Wednesday. Take care, everybody.